Liverpool only need 3 signings to get back to winning the Premier League. Liverpool played 57 competitive matches last year. Today, we are going to look at the squad planner to see if the squad is big enough to compete across all competitions next season. I think looking at the squad planner allows us to see how much depth we have and if we have enough in certain positions. I think we know with Iraola coming in from his time at Bournemouth, he favours that 4-2-3-1. So that is how it's been set up here today. I think with Iraola, we know he favours youth and he likes to promote the youth. So straight away, I expect players like Andoni to have a bigger role next season. I expect players like Rio to play more minutes. Also, if we look at our centre-backs, Leone, Jacquet, young defenders coming in. We also recently signed 2 more young defenders. So maybe the depth at centre-back is already covered. I think the first thing we need to do when we look at this squad planner is take out any players that we think aren't going to play too many minutes, perhaps are going to go out on loan and are not going to be part of the main squad. So straight away, players like Woodman, won't expect to get too many minutes. Someone like Ramsey, I'd expect to be moved on, ideally out on loan. And I think here is the type of numbers you could expect. Chiesa, we may look to move him on. However, there are talks coming out of the club that Iraola might give him a chance. I think players like Elliott coming back, I think they should be integrated with the squad. I think players like Endo, it'll be interesting to see what Iraola wants to do with him. Tsimikas came back off loan. If we go position by position, I think our goalkeeper, I think we can tick that off. I think we are covered. Alisson is a top keeper, one of the best in the world. Mamardashvili, I think, is a very good number 2. I think he has the potential to be a number 1. I think he needs to improve with his ball playing ability. However, for the goalkeeper, I don't think we need to recruit. Now, if we look at centre-backs, we can see here 4 centre-backs. Is that going to be enough to cover us? Like I said, we played 57 games last season. If we want to compete and go far in all competitions, we are going to play a lot of games. Do we need more bodies in here? Potentially. Especially when you think Gomez is injured so frequently. Leone, Jacquet, they're coming off injuries. Are they going to be able to compete? Leone was great in his debut against Southampton, so I'd hope that he'd be able to keep that ability when he needs to step into the team. Van Dijk, he played every single Premier League game last season. We know he's another year older. He is available. Hopefully that continues. However, I think it would do him the world of good and also his form some good if he can be taken out of the team just for a rest. Jacquet, I think, is the interesting one if we expect him to come in and be a starter, which I think Iraola will do. We need to see how he integrates to the Premier League. It's a new league for him. I think we could look to bring another body in here. However, I don't know if we will, because we've also signed 2 more young centre-backs that potentially could step forward. Now, if we look at left-back, I think this is a very interesting position. If we look here, we have Kerkez, Tsimikas. Sadly, we let Robertson go. I personally think that was a mistake. Yes, he might not have been at the level he has been, but from a leadership point of view, I think we need those characters behind the scenes, especially with Salah gone. We need winners. Tsimikas is interesting. If he's brought back in to be a number 2, is he good enough? I'm not sure. Why did we loan him out in the first place if we believed he was good enough? Kerkez, I think, is a top player, and I think Iraola got the best out of him, so we hope that he can do the same again. I think if a player became available in the market that perhaps could play centre-back and cover left-back, I think maybe you can try and go for that. Can you make that move? Can you find a player of that profile? I think of players like Calafiori. Can we find that? Links came out to Schlotterbeck. I think if the release clause is correct at around 50 to 60 million, then I think we make that move for him. Another player, Van de Ven, I believe he could also fill in at this gap, but now rumours are coming out that he's going to stay because he likes what De Zerbi's building there. Now, right back, Bradley, Frimpong. This is a very interesting position for me. I think Bradley and Frimpong are both good players. Bradley, I think, is a very good right back. However, his availability is an issue. Okay, so if we think about Bradley, he's a bit like Gomez. I think when he plays, you know he's going to do a good job, but is he always available? I think right back's an interesting position because when I look at this squad right straight away, I think, yeah, bring in a right back. I'm a big fan of Coyote of Brentford, and I think if he's available, you bring him in. I think the other reason we've seen our struggles at right back this season with players like Jones and Szoboszlai filling in. However, I don't think you want them doing that, especially Szoboszlai. He's been our best player last season. You want him in his best position. You want him dictating the game. You want him getting on the ball more. You want his legs in midfield. Especially when we look at this midfield, you need legs in there. I know Gomez can cover, but Gomez isn't always available, and especially when we need the bodies at centre-back. We know Endo's covered there before. Endo's also covered centre-back before. Maybe that's why you keep him around, for that versatility. It's a shame because we spent big last summer in the fullback position with Kerkez and Frimpong, and you might say, well, we need to do that again. Like I said, we need 3 signings, the first of which has to be a defender. Has to be. So signing number 1, in my ideal world, would be Coyote. Now, this isn't first signing as in you get it done first in the window. This is if we have 3 signings to make, Coyote should be one of them. Now, that might seem a bit silly when you could argue that we need it more at centre-back, we need it more at left-back. However, the reason I've gone with Coyote at right-back, one, I think he's a young, very, very good player. He has Premier League experience, which I think is invaluable. I also think right-back, we are fluid with. I think if we're going to get onto it, but if we look at our wingers, or we'll do it, I guess we'll do it now. If we look at our wingers, this is with Elliott coming back and Chiesa staying. It's very possible that they both go. If they both go, we have no one. For that reason, I've included them both. I'm a big fan of Elliott. I think we should keep him around. I think he should be in the squad. I think with Elliott, he's also a bit more adaptable. You could probably bring him into the 10. He doesn't really have the pace to be out here. He's probably more in this section. Elliott probably would work with a Frimpong behind so he could overlap. However, that leaves a big defensive frailty. One of the reasons Coyote would be one of my first choices as a new signing is that it allows us to use Frimpong as a right winger while still having a right back here. If we could rely on Bradley to be fit for the whole season, then I don't necessarily think Coyote is that much better than him. In that case, I'd look to bring in another centre back, potentially one that could play left back here. However, as we know we can't rely on Bradley the same we can't rely on Gomez, I think if we bring in someone like Coyote, he gives us that defensive solidity whilst allowing us to use Frimpong as a backup right winger, especially if these are going. Now, on the concept of right wings, I think there's absolutely no surprise who I think it should be. If you watched the last video, you will know that I am umming and ahhing. However, I think the next player that we should look to bring in is none other than Yan Diamonde. I think if he comes in, he's a great Salah replacement. No one can replace Salah in terms of numbers, but I think he's exciting, he's dynamic. He'll come in, he'll do a job, and he'll be able to be aggressive. He also has some ability to play off the left. He's done that before in his career. So that's good, as also we see over here, we don't have the depth. I think with Diamonde being rapid, being good in the 1v1s, being able to go inside, outside, I think it gives us another dimension attack, which I think we really are lacking. Next, I think our next problem area here, in midfield. Now, I know if you look at this squad planner, you'd think, well, hang on a minute, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the most depth we've got in any position. It is. However, 2 of them need to play every game. And if you're looking at that, you're probably looking at that, Gravenberch and Jones, or Gravenberch and McAllister. Iraola's system requires runners from midfield. Does McAllister have the same legs? We've seen maybe this season, he struggled a lot. Iraola's system also encourages fast pace, directness. Can Jones do that? I think he can, but he also takes his time on the ball. So I don't think either of these are necessarily an ideal fit. Gravenberch I'm a big fan of. I think Gravenberch could do our Alex Scott role. Spoiler alert, I think our third and final signing needs to be a midfielder. In an ideal world, by the way, we'd have a couple more signings and we'd actually bring in 2 midfielders. However, if none of these midfielders go, I would expect more minutes for Nioni, potentially more for Endo, but definitely more for Nioni. And I think an extra body in here that can do the legwork also will elevate the games of Gravenberch and allow him to be the Alex Scott profile and carry the ball and run forward, which I think is Gravenberch's best aspect of his game. Now, you might be thinking, why Szoboszlai in the 10? Szoboszlai can also bring back here. He is. However, I expect Szoboszlai to start every game he's available. And you might think, well, why is he playing in the same position as Wirtz? Well, I actually think Iraola will look to use Wirtz off the left. And if he uses Wirtz off the left, he'll look to drift in, allow Kerkez to go on the outside. But we'll touch on that in a minute. If we go back to midfield, I think we need another body here. I don't know if Endo's necessarily good enough. I think he can be maybe 5th choice. I think potentially there's rumours that one of these 2 of McAllister and Jones will be moved on. And if that is the case, we definitely need a midfielder. There's a lot of names that I like in midfield. We've seen Elliot Anderson, the bid from Man City. They're talking about £120 million. West Ham came out and said they want 85 for Fernandes. Bournemouth have said they want 80 for Scott. I think all of that is too much. We spent a lot of money last year. I think players like Sangare from Lens and Kamara from Monaco are the type of profiles you need. Kamara's better on the ball, but both of them can win the ball, drive the ball forward, pass the ball. I think that's what you need to bring in. Now, I will say, for me, I think Kamara, if you can get him, he's the one you bring in. That elevates Gravenberch's game. It means that Gravenberch doesn't have to be the same number 6 that sweeps and allows him to go forward, which I think he actually likes doing and he's better at. I want to also say that if we can get Fernandes, I think Fernandes has the highest ceiling out of all the midfield players available, including Elliot Anderson. He can play in the 6, in the 8, in the 10. If you can go for him, you go for him. Now, you might think, okay, well, those are the 3 signings. Coyote, Diamonde, and Kamara. But actually, this squad still needs more. And like I said, I'll throw in 2 extra signings that I think will really elevate us in terms of squad depth. But If we look here now in our number 10s, we might think we're quite light there, and we are quite light there. However, players like Elliott can come in. I think, as we've seen with Krupi Jr., potentially when Ekitike's fit, we can put Ekitike back there and play them. We have enough quality, potentially Jones could come in here, that actually we don't necessarily need this. We allow Wirtz, Szoboszlai to thrive in this and make the position theirs and have some real quality in this area of the pitch. If we talk about the left wing, Gakpo and Rio, I think at this stage, unless an offer comes in for Gakpo that we really can't confuse, I think you keep him round, but not to start every game. I think he's a good bench option. I think he's good squad depth, playing in the cup games, the occasional Premier League game. Rio, I think, is a quality player. You want to see him given more minutes, and a coach like Iraola can elevate his game and really push him forward. However, you can't give him too many minutes because he's so young and you don't have that effect on the body. So what I think Iraola will do is bring Wirtz out to the left and let him sort of roam in this space. Allow him all of this space to sort of work in the combinations with Kerkez, where Kerkez can go around the outside. And this is where we saw Kerkez do his best work under Bournemouth, allowing Wirtz operate in this zone of the field as a sort of left inside forward, wide 10, whilst we still have Kerkez given the width. And that's why I like Kamara, because then he can have the legs to cover. Up front, here, I think Isak and Ekitike are two quality players. However, we know Ekitike is going to miss a big chunk of the season. So all of a sudden, that doesn't look good depth-wise. So that's where my extra 2 signings come in. I think we've seen the recent links with Darwin. And actually, I think if you can get Darwin on a free, you bring Darwin in. He's played for the club before. I think he'd suit Iraola's system. He presses really well. He works really hard. Yes, he's not the most clinical, but as a backup and a knowing backup, I honestly don't think you can get much better than that. However, in an ideal world, a realistic ideal world, I think you get a player that can cover sort of anywhere along the front 3. They're fluid, they're flexible, and I think also we need to look for 1, availability, but 2, potentially a bit of a bargain. Either you look at young players, obviously we have players like Jadon Danns, and I'd expect Iraola to give more minutes to the youth to come through. However, a name that I think would be interesting and one that would help our squad is Jarrod Bowen. Now, Bowen is very interesting. I think you only bring in Bowen if it's a good deal from West Ham. I know he's been their star player, and I know they won't want to get rid of him. He would probably play in the Championship just because he loves the club so much. However, if there is a chance that he wants to go and he becomes available, I think you bring him in. I know he's a bit older for a footballer. I think he's 31, but he's got Premier League experience. I think Bowen, if he's prepared to come in, be a bit part player, maybe bring him in on a 2-year deal, something like that, a season and a half player. I think he can cover, if needs be, with Isak. He can cover off the left, he can cover off the right. He scored goals in the Premier League before. He is a good player. He's not one of my essential players, and I think, to be fair, you could replace the name Bowen with anyone that's kind of dynamic enough to play along the front 3, and I don't think he's a necessity. But if it's an opportunistic signing, like they said Frimpong was, then I think you bring him in. The other reason why I think you keep Gakpo in this is, say we don't bring in Bowen, Gakpo has the ability to cover up front. Yes, it's not ideal, but he can do that. And that allows Wirtz here, and then the numbers you can sort of rotate. You want versatile players. Iraola likes that. Now, like I said, if we can get one more signing, I do think, especially with Konate leaving, which I think was a big mistake that we let him go, or that he didn't sign a new contract and the club let him go for nothing, we do need another centre-back. We need another centre-back. I don't think just 4 players is necessarily enough for the long season competing all 4 competitions. I think Gomez, if we knew he could be fit the whole season, I think, okay, maybe you can argue that's enough. But we know Leone came off a big ACL, Jacquet had a shoulder injury. We need another body in here. Now, I've already mentioned his name, but if you can get him for that rumoured release clause, I think Schlotterbeck is the one you bring in. I would have actually really liked Senesi. Looks like he's going to Spurs. Van Hecke also looks like he's going to Spurs. I think they would have both fit with Iraola's system of progressive centre-backs. Obviously, we know Senesi would have, of course. Schlotterbeck, I think also hits that. He's really good progressing the ball. He's got really good passing numbers. I can do a whole breakdown on him if you guys want, let me know. I think as well, Schlotterbeck being left-footed could potentially be that long-term replacement for Van Dijk, because that's the other thing. Van Dijk, yes, this coming season, he'll be here, but the one after that, will he be here? We're not sure. Is it better if Schlotterbeck's available this summer? Can you bring him in now? Potentially to learn from Van Dijk, maybe play Van Dijk at right centre-back. I know that's not ideal. I know that might be silly to move him. But if you can bring in Schlotterbeck this summer, I think you do. I think potentially it gives you an extra option here, and that allows something to happen. Maybe if you're really stuck, you throw him out there. You wouldn't want to. Ideally, someone like Van de Ven would be better at that. But I think you bring in Schlotterbeck. And there we have it. If it was me, I think those are the 3 signings, and then 5. But I think those are the 3 signings that really elevate this squad. If we're talking priorities, I think if we were to rank them, for me, Diamonde, first priority, just because we don't have the numbers, we don't have the depth out here. I think Kamara, a midfielder, is our second priority. And then I think a defender of some kind should be our third priority. I like Coyote because I think it gives flexibility to push Frimpong forward if we need to cover Diamonde, just because theoretically if Chiesa and Elliott go, well then at least we can kind of do that, and then it's a 2-2 split. And I think Frimpong is much better going forward than he is defending. I think if you can afford to bring in another centre-back, you do, especially, like I said, if it's Slotterbeck. I think if not, with the 4 back here and the 2 youngsters we've brought in, maybe if you're clever, you can make that last this season, especially if you keep Endo around. But once again, we don't want to just get through, we want the depth. Our benches sometimes this season were dire, where you look at other teams like Man City, Arsenal, who won the league, they're really, really strong. Now, the reason that I also say we only need 3 signings is if we look at our starting 11. I think our starting 11 with just those 3 signings is good enough to challenge for the league again. Now, with the changes and the signings brought in, this is how I would set up, and this is how I would expect Iraola to set up with the team. I think straight away, Coyote, Diamonde, Kamara. Those are your 3 signings in. I think this fits nicely. I think, like I said, Gravenberch can be your Alex Scott profile, carrying the ball forward, where Kamara is that Tyler Adams, looks to be the number 6. As well, Szoboszlai has the legs to be able to get back, to run, to get forward. If Diamonde comes in, he can cover out wide. Coyote, I think, is more solid defensively. If we get the ball out left, I think Wirtz can look to drive in, and that allows Kerkez all this space. And that's why we have Kamara, because then he can kind of still sit in his pocket, whereas players will push on like this, and then it still allows for that solid defensive. Iraola struggles sometimes defensively, so that's why I think a real number 6 would do that. I think McAllister has really good ball playing ability. I don't know if he has legs to cover that ground. That's why I think Kamara is a must. Diamonde is obviously a must, or some right winger, and I think potentially you could argue that maybe centre-back's a more pressing issue than right-back. I just think in terms of starting 11, increasing that right-back quality elevates the starting 11 more than the centre-back quality, because Van Dijk is obviously world-class, and I think Xhaka is really, really good and will improve. So I think if we're talking starting 11 alone, I think right winger, right back, and centre mid are the 3 that elevate this team. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let me know if you only had 3 signings, who would you bring in? Have I missed anyone out? If you think Kamara is not the right option, check out my previous video as I went over 6 defensive midfield options. Let me know if you think there's any other pressing issues in the starting 11 in the squad, and I'll catch you next time.